Hi. Can we all sit down quickly now? We've got people waiting for us online, so this is why the timings are quite tight. Thank you. I'm sorry I forgot to introduce myself earlier. I'm Becky Parry, I work for the Wave Project, have done since the very beginning. It's amazing to have you all here in the same room. We are so lucky to be able to get together like this after the last year we've had. And we are even luckier to have some of the speakers we have with us for the next few days. So, I'm going to introduce Hannah Green, who's speaking about her amazingly inspiring story. Get your tissues ready. We might need them. There might be some tears shed in the room. But yeah, welcome to Hannah, if she's live.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
When technology works. She can't, yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Very loud.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Hannah, we can hear you.
Perfect, okay. So, hi everyone, it's so nice to be here. And thank you, Joe, for the invite. And apologies that I can't be there in person. So, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about who I am. So, I always get introduced differently wherever I speak. So, first of all, I surf and I skate. And as some of you might have seen on the app that they're using for the conference, I can also knit on a skateboard, which I guess is one of my cool hidden talents. I'm a volunteer of the Wave Project here in Scarborough. I'm also an author, which still sounds very strange to say out loud. I'm a freelance writer and do bits of journalism, and I also work with the Centre for Homelessness Impact on lived experience and like comms. So I've also experienced homelessness, trauma, and addiction, and that's kind of where my book comes from. So at the end of 2018, I'm hoping you can see these photos because on my screen my face is kind of in front of them. So yeah, so at the end of 2018, I ended up homeless. So I've experienced a lot of trauma, and in 2018, I started experiencing flashbacks and nightmares, and most of that was kind of the abuse I experienced when I was a child. So at the time, I just finished university and I was still staying in my parents' house. But a lot of the abuse I experienced happened in that house and that village, although it was nothing to do with my parents. But that was making the flashbacks and nightmares worse. I was drinking a lot to cope. And to put it bluntly, like I didn't want to be alive. So I couldn't cope with staying in that environment and had to leave. So at first, I was sleeping on a lot of different sofas, and eventually it got to the point where I couldn't do that anymore. So I had to ask for help, which, turning up at your local council and telling them you have nowhere to live and no money and the rest of it is really, really humiliating. But when I asked for help, that's kind of when things got more messy and complicated, which obviously shouldn't be the case. So as a young person, in this country when you're homeless, it's slightly more complicated than if you're over 25, although you are entitled to more help. So this was kind of the start of me staying in lots of different places, some far more dodgy than others. And you can see there the top left-hand photo, that's me one of the first days I was homeless with all my stuff in Scarborough. So the first thing I'll point out is that first day when I asked for help, I had to retell my story like 3 or 4 times. I approached the council and then they sent me to a charity because of my age, and then they sent me to a different charity. So within one day, I had to tell my story, which was obviously traumatic for me to retell at that point 3 or 4 times. And I kind of had to jump through hoops to prove that I was entitled to help. And I think this is why things like the Wave Project are so important, because we can give kids, and I guess the same with adults, if it's a surf therapy program for adults, giving people time and a space where they don't have to do that. They don't have to come and retell the story to kind of prove that they're entitled to surf. They can just turn up, no labels and without all these preconceptions that some professionals can put on young people. So I was given a night stop placement. So that's basically emergency accommodation for under 25s, which is a great concept, but it meant that most days I was kind of walking the streets of Scarborough till 5 or 6 o'clock with all my bags, as you can see there. And then I had to turn up at a stranger's house with all my stuff. So I had to stay in 4 places to begin with over 9 days. And then the final place I stayed turned into a supported lodgings placement, which was basically the same thing. You'd stay in a spare room of a volunteer's house, but it was longer term. So that one of them photos, bottom left, obviously excuse the mess, but that's from then. So at the time, I was accessing various different mental health charities and services, and I wasn't really doing anything with my days, which obviously was a problem. I was drinking a lot, taking drugs, still just didn't really want to be me, I guess. And then, kind of a few weeks after I'd moved into this place, I got a phone call from one of the homelessness charities. And I don't really remember the whole conversation, but they basically told me about this new surfing program. They didn't say too much about it, but they basically said it was a chance to learn about the sea and learn to surf. And I said I wanted to know more. I'd always kind of wanted to learn to surf, but never had the chance. And if I was ever down at the beach in Scarborough, I would, I'd stand and watch the surfers. I always thought it was really cool. And it turned out it was kind of a similar concept to the Wave Project, but it was for adults. So I ended up going for an assessment, and again, I don't really remember much of it, but there was kind of two coach type people, and one of them had PTSD, so he seemed to understand where I was at, which was obviously nice. And they told me that this program was going to start in a few weeks. So obviously, I was really excited. I wanted to learn to surf, but at the same time, at that time, everything was making me panic. I was really, really anxious, and I wasn't sleeping at all. So the day came, and I completely panicked. I didn't turn up, which I think is quite funny looking back. And then one of the ladies who kind of worked for the charity rang me later that day, and I kind of explained that I panicked. So she offered to pick me up the following week, which was obviously massively helpful. So the next week came, and obviously I was anxious again. But she picked me up, and I kind of got in a car. I had my hood up, which was kind of my default at the time. We got to the surf shop, and I sat on this wall in front of the surf shop, which I ended up sitting on all the time after that. But I sat on this wall with my hood up. I wouldn't speak to anyone. I wouldn't make eye contact with anyone. And I purposefully sat on this wall so that I was away from everyone else, so people would not think to talk to me. And I was really, really skeptical. Obviously, I thought surfing was cool and I'd always wanted to learn, but I really didn't understand how surfing or getting in the sea was going to help me, at all. I really didn't think it would. So Matt Jones, who I think is with you guys today, so I remember him handing me my first wetsuit to put on. And honestly, I didn't listen to a word he was saying because I was panicking so much. I actually ended up putting the wetsuit on inside out. But then we got down to the beach, we took the boards down to the beach, and there was Matt, there was another instructor, there was one other guy there as well. And again, I wasn't listening because I was just panicking. I was looking at everyone on the beach, kind of thinking of everything that could possibly go wrong. And looking back, like the waves were really small that day, but I'd like really convinced myself that I was going to drown or that something really bad was going to happen. So eventually we got the boards into the sea, and I still struggle to describe it even now, because as soon as I was in the sea, even just up to my waist, before I'd even kind of tried to catch a wave or anything, everything in my head just changed. And it was like, I still say now, it's surfing is better than drugs, because in my head something just changed. And I quickly realized that when I was in the sea, I didn't get flashbacks. The anxiety basically disappeared. Um, and nothing else at the time other than drugs did that for me. So the bottom photo, second from the left, that I think was the second session, maybe second or third session. Um, yeah. So initially, the it was a 6 week pilot program. It was a new program, and each week I would turn up anxious, having not really slept, and usually with like cut up knuckles from punching things when I was angry or whatever. Um, and I would always turn up and sit on the same wall so that people wouldn't come and speak to me, and I'd have my hood up. And Matt would always come over and talk to me. And usually it was about the weather or the waves or, the rips and the surf forecast. Um, but he always managed to bring me out of my own head and get me to focus on the sea and surfing. And quite a few of those kind of first 6 sessions, I ended up being the only participant. Other people didn't turn up for whatever reason, um, which meant I was super lucky and basically got one-on-one surf lessons, which obviously people pay a lot of money for. I think at the time it was super helpful for me because I wasn't good with a lot of other people, especially men, because of kind of the trauma I'd experienced. But I quickly became comfortable with Matt, and from the beginning, I was kind of able to build that trust with him. And I remember, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks in, I turned up at the beach, and it was red flagged, and I didn't even know what that meant at the time. Um, and I can't remember if it was Matt or one of the other instructors told me that we weren't going to be able to get in the sea. And I remember just crying outside the surf shop because I'd hardly slept and I really, really needed to get in the sea. And I'd kind of seen, even over 3 or 4 weeks, how much it had helped me. And I noticed as well, as soon as, once I'd been in the sea, the night after, I slept really well. And that, nothing else had that effect. So after the initial kind of 6 week program, I think the charity kind of expanded it slightly. So then there was 2 different groups each week, and I think they could see like how much I was enjoying it and how much it was helping me. So they let me turn up to both sessions each week. So by that summer, I was surfing at least twice every week. And the surf shop, Dexter Surf Shop in Scarborough, they were great. They let me go down whenever I wanted. I could borrow the equipment for free. It was kind of before I was homeless, so I didn't have my own board or wetsuit or anything. But they just said, like, whenever you want, if you need to come down and get in the sea, you can use the stuff, which obviously was massively helpful. So by this point, I'd moved accommodation a few more times. I had ended up the placement I was staying in. When I'd moved in, they were obviously knew they knew about my situation, my circumstances, and they knew that males, especially young males, were a massive trigger for me with my trauma. And they said they understood that. They said that they would kind of accommodate that. And then a few months into the placement, the lady, the host, she made me aware that over the spring and summer she took in like exchange students for a week or a few weeks at a time, and usually they were young males, which was obviously a massive issue. So at first it was kind of one at a time, and then there was two, and then one week there was three, and then she told me that in a few weeks' time there was going to be four young males coming to stay. And at this point, there was already another guy there for like, I think he was there for 12 weeks to learn English. So there was going to be me in this house with 5 young lads, which was obviously a massive issue. So I made the charity aware and I kind of told them that I'm not okay with this and I couldn't deal with it. And the charity constantly told me that not all men are bad, which obviously I knew that. Like, I have a brother, I know that not all men are bad. And they told me it was something I needed to just get over. And obviously, when you've experienced trauma, you can't just get over these things. When they trigger things in your brain, you've got to work through them kind of slowly with professional help. You can't just decide that you're going to get over something and do it. I wish it worked like that, actually. But anyway, I was told that if I left the placement, I'd be making myself intentionally homeless, which would mean I wasn't entitled to any help or any support. So it got to the point the week after that when the 5 lads were there, there was a very small kitchen and I had to walk through the kitchen and there was 5 males in the kitchen. I had a flashback and things were bad. So I had to leave. And I ended up back on a sofa for a few days, but then obviously I couldn't stay. I got really lucky at this point because one of the coaches from the surf program, I can't remember his name, but he knew someone who worked quite high up at one of the homelessness charities, and he managed to pull a few strings and get me back into Night Stop, which was obviously a lifesaver, because at that point I would have been on the streets if he hadn't have done that. And then from there, I was moved into a hostel, which was a very interesting place, let's say. It wasn't a nice place to live. It was very chaotic. There was a lot of drugs and drink and crime, and there was 18 of us, all aged 16 to 25. And I don't know whose idea it was to put that many young people under one roof. I think if you put that many young people under one roof of any age, with any life experiences, it's going to be chaos. And then you add in the mental health, the trauma, the drugs, the alcohol. It just wasn't a good situation to be in. So around the same time the surf therapy course ended, I'm still not too sure what happened, but the charity doesn't exist anymore. So Matt introduced me to some people from the Wave Project, and then that's when I started volunteering with you guys. So the photos there, so the bottom right, that was one of the first Wave Project sessions I volunteered at. Obviously, we were performing our circus skills. Same with the photo above it, and then the one of me sat on the board, that was after one of the Wave Project sessions. A few of us went for a surf. So again, at this time, because I was still homeless, I didn't have any gear or wetsuit or anything. So it meant I could get in the water a bit more regularly. But also meant I had the kind of added, I guess, bonus of being able to pass on my love of surfing to kids as well. So from the off, I remember turning up to the volunteer training session, and everyone was so lovely, and it was like a big family, really. And most people, I think, had been there before, but everyone was so welcoming. So, let me go to the next slide. I'm not sure why it won't let me go to the next slide. Yeah. So obviously you can see there the photo of the Christmas fancy dress surf, which is always a highlight. So now most of my best friends are people that I've met through the Wave Project. And I think when kids turn up and sometimes they're clearly really anxious and they don't want to put a wetsuit on or they don't want to get in and they don't want to leave the car park, I think sometimes being able to say, like, I know how you feel, and actually mean it, I think it's quite important for some kids. And sometimes they look at me, it happened a few weeks ago actually, I said that, and they look at me as if to say, no, you don't, like, you don't have a bloody clue. And then I explain that actually I do, and I've been where they are. I think sometimes that makes a really big difference, and it can just help them, take that step to put a wetsuit on or walk down to the beach or whatever it is. So I have kind of no doubt that surfing was the thing that changed everything for me. It both changed and saved my life, I guess. It made me want to get sober and stay sober. It improved my confidence, it helped me meet new people. And I think that was what allowed me to eventually get my own flat just before lockdown last year. So something else that I'm very interested in is politics. So during the last general election campaign, someone that I'd met kind of on Twitter through surfing was running for parliament in this area. And because of that surfing link, it meant that I got involved, and I met loads of really cool people, and I got to meet the leader of the political party, without dropping any names. And it was kind of that group of people that helped me look for a flat. They helped me move into the flat. Some of them gave me furniture and different things. But without surfing and without having, the confidence that surfing gave me, I really wouldn't have been able to do any of that. I think surfing meant as well that I started to trust people a little bit again. And Matt, I know you're listening, you're going to hate this. Kind of the patience that Matt showed me and the kind of real belief that he had in me when I didn't even believe in myself. I can't really tell you how much that meant to me even now. And I think that's helped endlessly in me starting to trust men again, although that's still ongoing. So Matt, thank you very much. And the first, I'd never written until last year. It was never something that I'd thought about doing. And the very first thing that I wrote and that got published was about surfing and kind of how it saved my life. And it was that getting published which then led to me being able to write lots of other things, especially my book, which I wrote last year during the lockdowns. And when I first started surfing, obviously, as I've said, I would refuse to speak to people. I would put my hood up, I would hide. And now I'm speaking to you guys, and people all over the world about my experiences. So I think that really shows us what surfing has the power to do. So there's some photos there. So for some context, the photo of me pushing the police lady, I did have permission to do that. That was my book launch in April. She came down to kind of support my book, which was incredible. And then the photo next to that, we did some filming with the BBC on BBC Look North, and that photo was from then. And so was the photo in the top right, actually, as well. And then the photo in the bottom right, so that is Karen. So I met Karen on the original surf therapy course for adults, and we stayed in contact. And she's one of my best friends now. We go surfing together, we go camping together, we both have vans. And she's just a really great friend that I met because of surfing. It's not letting me change my slide. There we are. So yeah, I've put that photo there because I think that's one of my favourite photos from the Wave project. And yeah, sometimes, we had this thing where I work a while ago, and we had to show, it was like a team building type day, and we had to show like a family photo, or they said, it doesn't have to be a family. And I showed them this photo because, to me, the Wave Project is like a family. It's better than a real family, I think. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what my experiences taught me and what I think we can learn from them. So I think the first thing is that like past experiences shape our behavior, shape kids' behavior. So when kids, or when it was me, when adults don't want to engage, or they don't want to put a wetsuit on, or they turn up and they've punched something and they've got cut up knuckles, there's always a reason. And I think we don't always need to ask, we don't always need to understand what that reason is, but we need to be aware that there is a reason. And they might not trust professionals. And in my experience, that's completely understandable because, there's a lot of good professionals out there, but sometimes just having one bad experience can really change how you see all professionals. So everyone, no matter the situation or where they are, deserves a break to have some fun. So I think that's even more important if you're struggling with your mental health, or you're homeless, or you've experienced trauma, or whatever it is. People need an escape from the stuff that's going on in the head or at school or whatever it is. And I think, especially as adults, we forget how important having fun is and just doing things that we want to do. And especially if we missed out on a lot of it when we were kids for whatever reason. So I think being able to give kids a safe space to have fun is a real privilege. And having kind of a safe space you can turn up to, regardless of your circumstances, is priceless. So I mentioned before about having to turn up to different charities and having to retell your story and fill in tons of paperwork just to kind of prove that you should be able to do something, or to prove that you should get help. The Wave Project, maybe obviously there's paperwork behind the scenes and stuff, but the kids can just turn up. They don't have to come and fill in endless paperwork just to get a surfboard, and they can turn up and be whoever they want to be. They can tell the volunteers absolutely nothing about themselves if they want. That's kind of one of the benefits of it. And there's no labels, there's no judgments, there's no preconceptions. They kind of just turn up and we accept them for who they are and where they're at. And if they don't want to surf, they don't have to surf. They can just get in the sea if they want and have a swim. But again, there's not even the pressure to do that. So positive, meaningful connections really matter. So not everyone has a great family. And as I said, for me, the Wave Project is like a big family. But I think when kids turn up, they might not always have great role models at home, or they might live in difficult situations, or they might be bullied at school, or they might be a young carer. So being able to be around adults who are kind of positive and focused on the kids having fun and just focused on the kids is really, really important. To give an example, when I was living in the hostel, there was 18 young people in there. So obviously I was constantly surrounded by all these people. I had lots of connections in there, but none of them were positive. And I'm not blaming anyone who lived there. I'm not saying, none of that is their fault. Everyone had their own stuff going on, and no one's to blame. But when you're surrounded by drugs and drink, and crime and different things, it's hard to get yourself out of that mindset. So being able to go to the Wave Project and meet people who were really cool, who were positive, who were trying to do good things with their life, was really important for me. And it was kind of at that point, it was the only time I was able to go and meet people who had a positive influence on me and who could kind of help steer me away from all of that stuff. So, as a lot of us know, mental health services, homelessness services, drug and alcohol services are all underfunded and overstretched, and the sea is completely free. So, I think we should be using that more. Um, Waiting lists are ridiculous, and the service you get isn't always the best because of time limits. And obviously, with mental health services, there's normally like a set amount of sessions you get. Um, and the sea has this incredible healing power. So, I think we should be utilizing that. And obviously, it's not as easy as, you can't just tell someone to go and get in the sea and all the problems are solved. But I think there's definitely more we can be doing. And sometimes it's the little things that have the biggest impact. So for me, it was Matt talking to me about rips and the tide and different types of fish and jellyfish and different things on a day when I turned up and just really didn't want to exist anymore. And little things like that just have a massive, massive impact. So, obviously, unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person today. But if anyone would like a signed copy of my book, I have lots of copies here. So if anyone wants a signed copy posting out, I can do them at a slightly cheaper price. So if you send me a message on the Wova app or Twitter or Instagram or my email, and we can kind of get that sorted. So does anyone have any questions? And thank you for listening as well.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so inspiring. The whole room, I think, shed a tear when you were telling us your story, so thank you. We do have a question, and that is, can you introduce us to Nerf?
Of course, yes. So this is Nerf, obviously the Wave Predicted shirt. So when I was home, my best friend at the time died, and wait, I can hear myself echoing. Oh, that's better. So my best friend died, and she had this cuddly penguin. It wasn't this exact one, but it was exactly the same. Um, and when she died, she had it with her, and I never got it back. Um, and a few months ago, some of my friends found the same penguin. And so now it kind of goes everywhere with me, and I kind of tell people it's my emotional support penguin, and it's normally in my back pocket of my jeans or one of my pockets. So it kind of does everything with me, and it's kind of if I'm anxious, I'll have it with me more kind of thing. But so Nerf came to the Wave project for the first time maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was in my she was in my pocket, and there was a girl up at Caton Bay, and she was really upset, and she didn't want to get in the sea. She didn't want to put a wetsuit on. She didn't want to kind of leave the car park, and it just kind of popped into my head to introduce Nerf to her. And she took Nerf and she went down to the beach and she got in the sea with Nerf. Nerf went in the sea. Um, and I don't think any of us thought that she was going to leave.
Siobhan, can you ping her? thing. There was bound to be a glitch today, wasn't there? At least one. So looks like we've lost Hannah's connection. The guys are trying to see if we can get her back. I don't know if we can, but we will be going very shortly. I don't know how much time we've got. We've still got a few minutes, so if we can get her back, we will, but otherwise we might have a short break until the next one at 2. Yeah. Yeah, please post it on the Hoover app. We can see how many questions are there, and then we can try and pull out a few to ask individually. We can either try and hand the mic to you, or we'll ask the question at the front here. Thank you. What a shame. I wanted to hear all about Nerf. Oh. If you can hear me, just whilst we're here, we've got, as Hannah said, we do have Matt in the room. I'm not going to point him out. I don't want to embarrass him too much, but big thanks. Go on, Matt in the back corner over there. Obviously, really, really influential to Hannah's story and her, her journey home. So, well done, Matt, and thank you.